Hi, welcome to Planetary Calendars, Astro Portraits. I'm Ralph Demetrius, one of the astrologers. The portrait this week is part of our musician series, and it's Barbra Streisand, a Taurian, with Aries rising and a moon in Leo. Boy, does that describe her. Now, remember, you can find our portraits and our forecast here at Planetary Calendar Astrology on YouTube, and of course at planetarycalendar.com. Barbra Streisand was born on April 24th, 1942 at 5:04 a.m. in Brooklyn, New York. Now, people who probably came to the game a little later, a little younger in other words, probably don't realize that her main work for many years and her real start was on Broadway. You know, she's a New Yorker. She's the quintessential New Yorker in many ways. And she really got her start on the stage on Broadway. Now, when you're going out on Broadway, okay, it's real helpful if you have strong Cancer in your chart someplace. Why? Because New York is a Cancer city. Well, her IC is Cancer. In other words, New York really is her home. You know, she is kind of the quintessential New Yorker. At her midheaven, she has Capricorn. So a real desire to achieve. And that Capricorn goes back to the Saturn at 28 degrees Taurus, conjunct Uranus at 28 degrees Taurus. That's called a partile conjunction. That's right at the stars of the Pleiades. So it's a very deep, complex energy. Okay, and that's in her second house, along with her Sun and her Mercury, all in Taurus. Now, her Sun and her Mercury are early in Taurus. This is what's called the bossy part of Taurus. So there's a real charmingly bossy part of her personality, which of course is just, pushed along by that, Aries rising, because the Aries rising is, aggressive, but right behind that Aries rising is this charmingly bossy Taurian personality. Remember, it's Taurus in its own house. Taurus is the throat, the voice. And of course, she's most famous for her singing. Okay, so very famous for her singing. The rising is Aries. What's going on over in the fifth house of creativity? The moon. So the rising is at 6 degrees. The moon is at 10 degrees. 10 degrees Leo. So there's a trine between the two. So that creativity, that desire to kind of be heard, is greatly supported by that Leo moon that loves being on stage. Like I said, remember, she spent a lot of time on the boards of Broadway before she ever came to Hollywood. She did a lot of stuff. In fact, one of her first great roles, Funny Girl, was a role that she did on Broadway before it made its way onto the movies. So conjunct the moon in Leo is what? Chiron and Pluto. Now, really, she's got these interesting connections going on. She's got Pluto conjunct Chiron in the moon. Pluto is, takes 240 years to go around the Earth. It always relates to large groups. So there's something about her emotional nature, about her moon, about the way she moves, that has a universal connection. Meanwhile, her Saturn, her desire to achieve, is conjunct Uranus. Once again, an outer planet. It takes 84 years to go around the Sun, as compared to Saturn's 28 years. So once again, it's a big planet. It's one of these planets that relates to the mass media. So her achievements are also connected to the mass media, to electric. I mean, I've heard Barbra Streisand sing many, many times and seen her in many movies. And even though I lived in New York, I don't think I've ever seen her in person. All of what I know from her was from electronic or electric media, right? Or photographs, or something that's very Uranian. Uranus has a lot to do with electricity and technology. Now, her Sun and her Mercury are conjunct in Taurus, in the second house, which once again, is this wonderful voice. The voice as a resource. You find a lot of Taurian musicians and singers. A Taurus very strong in their charts. I think Celine Dion has Mars in Taurus, for instance. There's a number of people who have that position. I think Billy Joel might have it as well. He's also another Taurian. Very strong voices. In the second house, it means it's part of their natural talent. It's part of Barbra's natural talent. Okay? What's interesting is right above the horizon, as the rising planet, is Venus. Venus in Pisces. That's the exalted role. It means that in the studio, within the arts, the protected space of the studio, she's very artistic, very creative, great storyteller. Actors are not just performers, they're storytellers. What's interesting, she has a conjunct her Ceres, which I would consider like the queen of the nomads. It's a goddess energy. It relates to our ability to herd other people. And it means within the studio, she's very good at managing other people. And it's Venus, so it's all about the arts. And it's Pisces, which is all about the imagination. So you see these number of places where theater, the moon in the fifth house, the desire to be creative and to be listened to. The Pisces in the 12th house, the desire to create stories within a protected space. The Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Uranus, the desire to use that great natural talent. It's all right there. And then, what was her first famous role? Funny girl. Well, in the third house, she has Mars and Jupiter loosely conjunct, 19 degrees to 28 degrees, in Gemini, the jokester. So she's very witty. It's Jupiter, the fun-loving planet. Mars, the kind of perpetual kid, A lot of energy there. In Gemini, the jokester. So she's witty, she's quick, she's willing to put her foot into it. She's willing to give you the jab because it's Mars. She's willing to do it in a good-natured way because it's Jupiter. So you have all these different things. And what's interesting is you look at the chart, most of the major planets are below the horizon, right? The Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Uranus are in the second house. Jupiter, Mars are in the third house. Pluto, Chiron, the Moon are in the fifth house. Neptune is in the sixth house. The only major planet actually above the horizon is the Venus. In the 12th house, the area of the protected space, the studio, the world of imagination. This is more classic of older musicians or older actors. Most of their life was lived internally, and then it projected out into one area. And in her case, the studio, the stage, that's where she's most comfortable. That people, you don't really see her out there. Younger artists, the younger musicians, their whole chart's above the horizon. Their whole life is lived out in the open. Barbra's part of that older model. Remember, she's born in 1942. It's not that long ago, but it really is part of that earlier model. Remember, the 1942, that was during the Second World War. There were no cell phones. There were no, laptop computers. There was, people had radios. Radios were an exotic thing. People were still using records, which amazingly have come back. But you look at this chart, and it's all this wealth of personality, these natural gifts that all project out through that Venus, and it's also the leading planet in what you might call a bowl shape. Whatever's all the way, at the head of it as the planets are moving, as the planets are rising, and it's her rising planet. So she's seen as very feminine. She's seen as very feminine, which is funny because she has the Venus. The Sun, Mercury, Saturn, and Uranus, all in feminine planets, but the Jupiter, the Mars, the Pluto, the Moon, they're all in masculine signs. So you get behind that initial shell, and there's this very capable, very kind of aggressive personality that's right there, ready to play. Very, very interesting chart. One of the Taurians, we're actually doing a little series of Taurians right now, so she's the first of the group, and I think one of the great talents of her era. So that's the chart of Barbra Streisand, Taurian, Aries rising, Leo, Moon. Come back and see us for the next portrait. You always find that's a planetary calendar astrology. Remember to subscribe, please. It's a big help. And you can also find those, and you can find, the planetary calendars at planetarycalendar.com. Be well.